Welcome to Money Mavericks and Mayhem, the podcast where finance meets audacity in a whirlwind of insight and excitement. Join hosts Adri Bleier and Ryan Duchak as they bring you closer to the stories of risk takers, rule breakers, and boundary pushers who are reshaping the financial landscape. Perfect for seasoned investors, budding entrepreneurs, or anyone curious about the tumultuous world of money. This is Money Mavericks and Mayhem.
To Money Mavericks and Mayhem, the podcast where we uncover the stories of financial innovation, strategy, and sometimes outright scandal. I'm Ryan Duchak.
And I'm Adri Bleier. In today's episode, we're exploring the financial wisdom of Dave Ramsey, breaking down the difference between credit and debit, and dividing into one of the wildest financial frauds in the 20th century, the salad oil swindle. Let's find out what that is. All right, let's get started.
All right. Well, Adri, Dave Ramsey is a household name in personal finance, I'd say. How did he build his reputation as a financial guru, and what led to his current successes?
So, well, Ryan, Dave Ramsey, of course, I think probably everybody recognizes Dave Ramsey's name these days, but his journey began with his own financial downfall, actually. In his 20s, he built a real estate portfolio worth over $4 million, ended up bankrupt due to bad debt and economic challenges. Determined to rebuild his financial life, he immersed himself in understanding money management and developed a system to help others avoid the same mistakes that he made. So his approach emphasized living debt-free, which is always good, saving diligently, and building wealth through more disciplined investing. He's written a whole bunch of books, particularly the Total Money Makeover became a bestseller of his, and his radio show, The Dave Ramsey Show, has millions of listeners, because his practical advice, which is rooted in his own personal experience, resonates with a broad audience, establishing him as a valued financial advisor. And you may know people. I know a couple of people that went through his programs that had tremendous amount of credit card debt, followed his instructions, and within, everybody's a little bit different from a time frame, but within a year or a couple of years, they then wiped out all that credit card debt. So I think it's great, that a lot of people in our industry don't like to talk about other advisors, right? They go, don't talk about them. No, we're all in this together. There's room for everybody, and if somebody's doing great things, we should talk about them and give them credit where credit's due.
Yeah, and probably not knock somebody for helping people get out of debt and have more financial freedom is not a foreign concept to me.
The credit card companies don't like them, probably, I would assume, but hey, we don't like the credit card companies.
I mean, no one's perfect. All of his methods, I don't 100% agree with necessarily, but the premise of his thought process and his advice process, I guess, I agree with it. It's hard to argue saying try to reduce your debt, and also it's impressive how he turned personal financial hardship in, I don't know if I should go so far as saying a comeback story, but a successful financial philosophy at the very least. Now, can you explain to our listeners the core principles of Dave Ramsey's financial advice?
Yeah, he always talks about baby steps, which reminds me of that movie, What About Bob? Did you ever see the movie, What About Bob, with Bill Murray? It's such a fun movie. But baby steps, right? I think that was the name of the book that was a Richard Dreyfuss, I believe, wrote. So Dave Ramsey's got 7 baby steps, which gives you a structured approach to helping you achieve financial wellness, which is step number 1, save $1,000 for a starter emergency fund. Nothing wrong with that. Always have an emergency fund, if you can, $1,000 while it might not seem like a lot, hey, it's a start. What he's saying is get started with that. Number two, pay off all debt except for your mortgage using the debt snowball method. And if you're looking to say, well, what is the debt? Well, we're not trying to take Dave Ramsey's thunder here, right? Go buy his books, right? I mean, he's spent a lot of time or listen to his do your own research on them and find this stuff out. So we're just kind of giving an overview here. Step three, save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund, right? So we talk about that a lot as well. You should have probably at least 6 months if you can. If you can only get 3 months, but if something happens, and God forbid you get laid off or whatever, you need some money to bridge that gap. Number four, invest 15% of your household income into your retirement accounts. Very important. And I always talk about this because yourself today, you're going to say, oh, I don't know if I can do 15%. We need to buy a new car. We need to buy, a new TV. Well, you don't really probably need those things. I mean, yes, you probably need a car, but you need the fanciest car, so forth and so on. So your future self will be very happy with the steps you're making now from a retirement standpoint. Your current self might be a little bit tight, but time flies. If you're 20, I know it seems like time's moving very slowly, but the next 20 years, if you're 20, you're looking towards the next 20 years and thinking, wow, those last 20 years went really slow. The next 20 years doesn't go so slow. So start investing 15%. I agree. Save for your children's college fund, right? Pay off your home early. And then finally build wealth and give generously, right? So I agree with those if you can, right? I mean, things are very difficult for a lot of people today with inflation. I talk to a lot of young people and they're struggling just to make rent, right? So you still need to live. Start with step one, right? You don't have to have all 7 steps all at once. As you start building, hopefully building some wealth and saving some money and hopefully making more money instead of going out to buy, well, we just had this conversation, instead of buying the Acura, you could buy the Honda version instead, right? For instance, everybody wants the Acura over the Honda, but the Honda is basically the same car, right? Yeah. So they're both going to get you there. So just they're practical advice. So I think his approach really emphasizes living on a budget, which is hard, and nobody likes a budget, but it's important. Staying debt free, right? Which isn't that hard. Just don't get into the credit card scheme, right? And then focusing on long-term financial goals. So not today, not tomorrow. What am I trying to accomplish 10 years from now? What am I trying to accomplish 15? What are my goals for 20? What are my goals for retirement? So forth and so on, right? So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think the one area where I slightly disagree with you is getting into the debt snowball, and I think you said you didn't want to steal Dave's thunder. I don't personally believe that's his thunder. That's a very common practice that we use daily, and basically, I would like, if you're okay with it, to explain to our listeners what the premise of that is. Anyone that wants to, feel free to reach out to us and be happy to go into more detail and work up an actual snowball. But are you okay with me going into it?
I'm fine. You can do whatever you want. It's a free country, right? You can do whatever you want.
Freedom of speech. All right, I'm going to talk about it. So debt snowballing is basically, for an example, let's say you have five debts, credit card, car, whatever it may be, excluding your mortgage. You have 5 different, I'll say credit cards because it's easier. Each one has a minimum payment of $50 a month. So that's $250 a month, and you have an extra $100 you want to put towards those. So when we do it, we use a lot of math to figure out the most efficient way to pay it off. And snowballing assumes you keep that $3 payment every single month until all of the cards are paid off. So basically, you start with card number 1, and that extra $100 goes to it. So $150 is going towards credit card number one. Once you pay that off, you no longer have that $50 minimum on that card, so you don't need to make that payment still. The debt snowball method is, yes, you do. You still keep that same $50 payment, but now instead of $150 towards debt number two, you're adding that $50 minimum. So now you're paying $200 on debt number two. Once that gets paid off, now you're at $250 on three, $300 on four, and then ultimately $350 a month on credit card number five until that's fully paid off. And basically you're snowballing those payments to keep getting them bigger on the last debt. And it's powerful. It really is. I love debt snowballing. On a side note, what was this? Not yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was talking to a new financial planning client that we're working to reduce their debt and putting together a debt snowball and going through all of this stuff. And one of the things with Ramsey and what you kind of alluded to a little bit with going through his baby steps is the difference between need versus want. And we looked at this couple's credit card balances and their current payments and the minimum payments and looked at everything as it stands today without actually doing the snowball yet. And what I explained to them, basically with how they were paying their debt currently, they had, and don't quote me on these numbers, but it's like 13 or 14,000 worth of credit card debt that they were working to pay off. And when we ran the numbers, they were paying $13,000 or $14,000 in interest as well on that. So ultimately, let's call it $13,000. They were going to pay a total of $26,000 for that $13,000 in debt if you included all of the interest. So what I explained to them is, and again, could be a poor example, but I said, so the $1,000 TV that you bought on that credit card, you're ultimately paying $2,000 for by the time you pay it off. In your mind, is that TV worth $2,000 to you? If the answer is yes, great, keep going. If the answer is yes, we need to have a different conversation. But their answer was no. So really understanding the difference between need versus want. I want a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
I need very few. I want lobster and filet mignon for dinner every single night. I don't need that ever. Want it. So
might have a heart attack, but thanks.
Yeah. Minus that part. That's why I don't need it. I don't need a heart attack. I also look at Ramsey's approach as more of and this is relative to finance, but I'll example it out into dieting. And this is a financial lifestyle change is what his approach is, as opposed to a fad diet. You can go on a fad diet or a crash diet and lose some weight. Yes, that works. Most people who do that put that weight back on.
Yeah.
So you drop 15 pounds, you gain 15 pounds. You end up yo-yoing because you keep going on fad diets versus the person who truly changes their lifestyle and their eating habits. That's a long-term approach. You won't lose that 15 pounds as quickly, but now you're eating in moderation and more healthy and you're exercising more, so on and so forth. So you're going to lose that 15 pounds slower, but you're going to keep it off. Mm-hmm. And I personally believe that's how Ramsey's approach when it comes to financial planning or management, that's what his aim is. I want to change your mindset and how you're living and spending versus just fixing this quickly. I mean, that client we were talking to the other day, yeah, we can figure out a way to clear all this debt out. But if you keep living the same way and just rebuild that 13,000 in debt, what was the point?
Right.
you cleared out some space on your credit card to refill it, I guess. So it's better than nothing, but it's still not solving the problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, relative to Dave, his baby step approach has, without a doubt, guided millions to financial success and freedom. But one thing Ramsey is also known for is a very strong stance against credit cards. Can you explain his reasoning behind that?
Yeah, which I think everybody probably knows. We don't always follow what we know, but the belief is that credit cards do encourage overspending, and then obviously leads to debt accumulation. Ultimately, can derail any financial goals you may have. So he advises against using credit cards altogether, even for rewards, as he believes, and the risk outweighs the benefits. Now, this just comes down to discipline, really, in my mind, because I agree with him that many people they get into credit card trouble because of overspending on their credit card. But on the same flip side, I use credit cards all the time, but I pay them off, right? So I pay them off every month because even if it's only 1% cash back, or depending on what credit card, hey, that's 1% cash back. And if I'm paying almost everything I have and I'm accumulating thousands of dollars in debt every month, but paying that in full, and I only get 1% back, well, why wouldn't I? That's kind of free money, not really, but in some cards, depending, might be give you 2 or 3%, or if you travel a lot, use the points for travel, depending on your lifestyle. But the key is making sure you pay that off. And we're not talking about credit today, right? Because we've had episodes about credit. So there is a little bit of difference there. If you're young and you want to build your credit score, well, maybe don't pay it off every single month for a little while, but it becomes discipline throughout your life to pay off those credit cards. So I understand where Ramsey's coming from here. And I agree with him on a general stance, because we know a lot of people get into trouble with credit card debt. If you could be disciplined, I advocate using the credit card to your advantage. So he also advocates using debit cards or cash for all purposes, which I get, right? It emphasizes the importance of only spending what you have. Your debit card comes out of your checking account, all right, or whatever you have it linked to. So whatever's in your checking account, that's all you can spend on your debit card. I will say, and this really has nothing to do with financial concerns, but more security concerns with debit card use is if there's fraudulent activity. Just recently, I was traveling with my son for soccer in Michigan, I believe. I left my debit card on the breakfast table at the hotel, and they called me, thank goodness, and said, "Hey, well, you left your debit card. We can send it to you." How many people are going to hold that card? It has all my numbers on it, has my name, has the CVC code, has everything on it. So even though you sent me this back, how do I know that somebody didn't? You're right. So it's like, lock your card, which I immediately did, then ask for a new card. Because if somebody goes to spend that in Michigan where I was,
Go through.
they're not going to do much. Likely. I mean, luckily I've never had that incident, but I know people that have, and they all said, "Good luck. You are not going to get, the bank's not going to remove that." And so there is a warning there for debit card use. For that reason as well is why I primarily only use credit cards now. But again, know what you're spending, know what you have, don't spend over your limits, know what your budget is, and pay that off. So it doesn't matter if I'm spending $4,000 a month. I'm spending $4,000 a month no matter what, whether it's on my credit card. Everybody's situation is different. But if I have it on my credit card, I make one lump payment. I get my money dropped into my account, that, whatever, I have cash back kind of things, but other people, again, use it for rewards. So that, from that standpoint, there is obviously a psychological impact that Ramsey talks about paying with cash versus credit, right? But now, according to Dave Ramsey, people tend to spend more when using credit because the pain of parting with money right away, it's less immediate, right? It's kind of kicking that can down the road. I can buy that TV for $1,000. If I've got, a few $1,000s in my checking account, oh, I got some bills coming up. I really want that TV. Well, I can pay for that later. Put it on. Now you're accruing debt, like you were just talking about. And that TV all of a sudden was $1,000, is now a $2,000 TV. It's not a great way to deal with your financial situation. But I'm not going to say that the philosophy hasn't helped many people, because it has. It helped a lot of people kind of shift their mindset towards responsible spending. And do I care how you get there, right? As long as you get to that responsible spending, that's what we're all talking about, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And that's where I also disagree with Ramsey's philosophy. My personal belief is you need to take a hard look in the mirror and determine what type of person you are. Because my family, my wife and I, we're the same way as you. We put everything on credit cards. I could not tell you the last time we had a balance on our credit card.
Mm-hmm.
Since being married, never. I can tell you that. 20 years probably since we carried a balance. So our financial personalities, we don't need to not use cards. We use it for the benefits, and that's it. And the security and so on and so forth. But with that said, if your mindset is, I am not disciplined enough at this point to do that, then absolutely.
Yeah.
His perspective, it resonates with many who are looking to simplify their finances. So if you're looking to get started, yes, follow that. You can get to a point where you can use credit cards in not. I'll agree that he's probably correct from the psychological standpoint that you probably aren't as strict with your budget knowing it's on credit card. Possibly.
Well,
I mean, I don't have empirical data to support that either
no,
way.
but I think generally speaking, I mean, remember that we talked about it on a show. I was walking past a woman talking about getting a new phone, and she got a credit card, and they gave her a limit of $500. And she's like, "Well, I can just buy a new phone. It's free money. I'm not going to pay it back." It's like, oh,
Yeah.
so where from an education standpoint, our school system doesn't talk about this, unfortunately. So people don't know general. I mean, we know obviously, but this is our business. We've studied this. So the general public, and I think especially young people. I mean, you were telling me the story about when you started college, and they took you to the fair, and it's just credit cards to all these young people, and it's like, oh, because as children, their mindset is, my parents have always paid for anything. I never had any responsibilities. For most people, or very little responsibility from a life standpoint. But it's great. People just give us free money, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with student loans, right? It's kind of the same situation.
Well, and that's what I mean. You need to educate yourself, number
Mhm.
one, and understand what the consequences for your actions are. That's first and foremost. But also with that, should I live off of debit card and cash or credit card for perks? That's a hard look in the mirror conversation.
Absolutely.
Who am I? What type of person am I? And you can change that. That type of person can change. But if today you're the person, no, if I'm the type of person, if I have room on my credit card, I will buy something. Or if I have the cash, I will buy it. If I don't, I won't. Okay, there's tricks that you can play on yourself. One of the things we do is have people who are that type of personality. Okay, let's set up an automatic savings plan. We'll move money into a separate bank or a brokerage account, putting it in cash. It's our emergency fund, it's our savings account, whatever it may be, but it's out of the same bank. It's not easily accessed. And it's a psychological trick, pure and simple. It's not a financial benefit, so to say. But one of the reasons we do it, that we tell a lot of our clients, is it is harder for you to pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, send me $1,000 back, because you're going to be embarrassed. So you're going to be ashamed. And we're full disclosure, it's your money. We cannot say no to you. We will not say no to you. If you want it, it's yours. But it is harder for you to call me and say, hey, I need $1,000. That's cool. What are you doing? I'm buying a new TV. If it's in your checking account and you can access that 1,000, you're just going to go buy the new TV. If you have to call me and tell me you're burning this money on something that you don't really need, you're going to hesitate to do it at 90%. It depends on your personality again, but most people will hesitate. So it's really all about the philosophy and the mindset and the psychological aspect of it. So if you are the type of person, put some tricks in place if you spend too much. If you are not, then put it on credit card. The perks are great. So why, as long as you don't get caught into a situation where you're running a balance, go ahead, run with it. Now, relative to his philosophy, how has it influenced the personal finance landscape in general? I feel like when talking to people, a lot of times, one of the first comments people will make, oh, I'm a Dave Ramsey follower. Or like, F that guy. I'm not, have you heard of Dave Ramsey? Don't say that name in my home. So can you get into his influence?
I mean, certainly there is a polarization for some people. And at the end of the day, as I said at the beginning, it's just there's good habits. And we might not agree with all of them, but at the end of the day, if it helps people live debt free, then that's great. And I think that's where he's really popularized that idea of living debt free and really, I guess, shifted the conversation around credit and budgeting. Millions of people have taken his courses and read his books and listened to his shows. And I think at the end of the day, he's just made the idea of personal finance more accessible to the general public that maybe don't know and just need some of that education, because the way he talks to people, he's very straightforward. He doesn't really beat around the bush, which I love. And he just, and some people don't like that, but it's important. You call it the way you see it. There's a practicality to his steps for a lot of people. And he's not, his audience really isn't, financial advisors. We're not his audience. We already know this stuff, or people that are, but it's for the people that have gotten into trouble and don't know how to get out, and they see that 25% interest rate on this, I'm never going to be able to pay this off, and here's the steps to take. So I think from that perspective, his philosophies have really been influential in debt-free living. Promoting that is, if you have debt, you go to bed thinking about that debt every night, and you say, oh my God, what am I going to do? And if you can get debt free, it's like a weight coming off your shoulders. Because I've had debt. I mean, I think we've all have at some point. And you go, God, I owe this money over here. It's just another bill. But when you don't have to pay those bills anymore, hey, it's really, really pretty nice. So yeah, I mean, I think he's obviously challenged culture, consumerism, and credit dependency, and just encouraging a return to discipline, right? Financial discipline and financial responsibility. And I think that's great. And I think it's an important message, and whoever can relay that message to the public is, again, you don't have to agree with every single part of it, but there's nothing bad there,
I 100% agree. And to me, what sticks out is your comment about financial discipline and responsibility. That is what people need to take from him, regardless of who it is. Throughout our world, not just America, we all talk about equality and everyone being the same. We are not. And you need to realize that. So there is no one-stop shop. We don't all have the same mindset. We don't have all the same habits and the same discipline and responsibility levels. So really, with Dave Ramsey, with us, with anything, you can't just look at someone and saying they are the right person on everything across the board. A lot of his philosophies are great for certain people.
Absolutely.
For some people, like the whole don't use credit cards, don't use debt. Well, if I'm building a real estate business, that's something most people have to go into debt for. And that can be good debt. That there is good debt versus bad debt.
Yeah.
Putting stuff on credit cards and running a credit card balance, that's bad debt. I don't care who you are. That's one thing. 100%. If you can avoid that, avoid that. That's a bad debt. But my viewpoint and yours as well, I know, there is some good debt as long as you're using financial discipline and responsibility.
Absolutely.
Those are the two primary factors to it. If you're just spending wildly and overextending yourself, like Ramsey with his real estate, my understanding is he got overextended with it and had too much debt. And then it's basically like a dam that you dam up a river. It's all good and great, but then the tiniest little crack in that dam can make the whole thing explode, and now you're flooding a town. So he got too close to the point where there was too much water pressure there, or financial pressure there, debt pressure, and something cracks, rates go up, deal, you don't get paid on a deal quick enough, or somebody's not paying you rent if you're in rental real estate, and your debt load is so high, you need everyone to pay their rent exactly on time for you to be able to pay your debt. Otherwise, you're going to default. That's a problem. So really keeping that discipline and responsibility, using debt wisely, that's the important thing that I take from him. And many other things from him as well, but not just a blanket, do everything he says without question. And regardless of your opinion of him, his impact on personal finance, no one can deny that. He emphasizes budgeting, saving, living debt-free. To your point, that has empowered countless people to take control of their financial futures and be able to sleep better at night.
Yeah.
And that's what matters.
Absolutely. Ryan, you're right. I think his legacy obviously is a testament, as we've been talking about, to the power of disciplined financial planning. And we could probably sit here and pick apart and talk about Dave Ramsey all day, but let's take a break, and then when we come back, let's talk. Just give a little bit of lesson on the differences between credit and debit and what we're talking about there. Sound good?
Yeah. Oh, before we do, we have to give a little disclosure about Dave Ramsey. You want to do it, or you want me to? And this is one thing I do not like about Dave Ramsey.
Go ahead. You go.
Okay. The SmartVestor program is a directory of investment professionals. Neither Dave Ramsey nor SmartVestor are affiliates of the Monteverdi Group or LPL Financial. So one of the tidbits before we shift to credit versus debit, Dave Ramsey has a affiliate network called SmartVestor, where as a financial advisor, we can pay to be a part of that network. And then if you go through SmartVestor, which Dave Ramsey promotes as, and he kind of puts out that it's him, you will get on the phone with me because I paid the fee. And now most of those advisors, and I'm not super familiar with who they are, I would assume there's some requirements to be an affiliate there that you have to follow his program. I would hope, but I don't know that. So
Right.
that's just one of the disclosures we have to give when talking about Dave, and
good food for thought for people out there.
yes. Now let's jump into credit versus debit.
All right. Endurance sports, swimming, biking, or running can be a great way to stay healthy and fit, as well as test your physical and mental strength. Having a dedicated coach provides accountability and structure for an athlete's training, ensuring that the healthy lifestyle is maintained. With their guidance and expertise, Victory Multisport coaches are able to challenge athletes to not just reach their personal goals, but dig deeper into themselves and achieve things they never thought were possible, pushing them out of their comfort zone with confidence. They will create a customized training plan and provide motivation when times get hard so you don't lose sight of the desired outcome. Victory Multisport offers tangible results that allow anyone to surpass their greatest expectations. Reach out to the coaches at Victory at info@victory-multisport.com. That's info@victory-multisport.com. Victory Multisport is not affiliated with LPL Financial or the Monteverdi Group. All right, we're back with Money Mavericks and Mayhem. Ryan, understanding the difference between credit and debit cards is big, right? I mean, they're completely different things, and I think it's crucial for managing finance. So can you start by explaining how each type works and the differences between them?
I certainly can, Adri. At a basic level, both credit and debit cards allow you to make electronic payments, but they function very different. So debit cards are linked directly to your bank account. When you make a purchase, the money is immediately deducted from your account. As you mentioned earlier, they offer less protection against fraud, but are often more widely accepted by merchants. Credit cards, on the other hand, they allow you to borrow money up to a certain limit. That it's not an immediate pull out of your bank account. You have a credit limit. You can borrow the money from that credit card company, and then you can pay the balance off monthly or carry it over with paying interest on it. They do offer better consumer protections and rewards, but they can lead to debt accumulation if they're not managed carefully, and interest rates are, I will be polite and not say they're knee-breaking loan shark rates, but they can be high.
Yeah.
And I'm being very polite when I say that they are not, because they kind of are. The key difference is that debit cards use your own money, while credit cards allow you to borrow money with the expectation of paying it back later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And we've talked about a lot of this in the last segment when we're talking about Dave Ramsey. One of the things with credit cards I just saw recently, and I think this is so shady. So I have a 13-year-old daughter, and we were trying to buy tickets, pre-sale tickets to, it wasn't Taylor Swift, but I can't remember who, Niles Horan perhaps, or I don't know. And it changes every day. Right. And the only credit card you can only use a credit card to buy the pre-sale tickets, and you can only use American Express.
Oh.
So if you don't have an American Express, you don't qualify to buy the tickets, which is just wrong. I mean, what happened to capitalism? I don't understand, so, but whatever, that's beside the point.
Isn't that the definition of a monopoly?
It seems like it to me. I don't know how it's legal. I don't know, obviously there's a lot of money changing hands there, but it's just wrong to me, and I have my own problems with American Express, so that's a whole different story. All right. So, but given the difference between debit and credit, as you were talking about, what are the pros and cons between them?
Okay. Yeah, let's break that down. So with the pros of a debit card, there's no debt.
Yep.
You can only spend what you have. There's no interest. So there's no interest charges. You're not borrowing the money, so you don't owe anything. And there's a lot of simplicity to it. Simplifies budgeting by limiting spending to what you have available. If you don't have it, you can't buy it. Pretty much as simple as that. Now, on the con side of debit cards is the fraud protection. It's limited compared to credit cards. There's no rewards or very few rewards. There are very few debit cards that offer rewards or cash back, and when they do, they're typically lower than credit cards. Now, one of the biggest cons to it is overdraft fees. So if you do, and this is where it's slightly a misconception, you can only spend what you have to a certain point. You can spend more than your balance within reason, and I'm not sure what the levels are, but you are able to overdraft your account, which means going into the negative. So if you have $100 in your checking account and spend 110 on a transaction, they will let that go through and in essence turn it into a credit card, where they'll pay for that extra $10, but they're going to charge you an overdraft fee, which are very high. I know the government was trying to limit those, or put hamstrings on them to some extent, but to my knowledge, it's either like $25 or $35 each time you do it. So that $10 overdraft that I had in that example cost me $35. That is an exorbitant interest rate. And it's not an interest rate, it's just a flat, it's $35. So that's 350% on that. So that's in my opinion, one of the biggest cons of using debit cards that can get you hurt. Now, looking at credit cards and the pros of them, the first one is the rewards. You get cash back, travel points, other perks, gift cards, things like that. There's fraud protection. So if somebody steals your information, they have stronger consumer protections, limiting liability for unauthorized charges. And then building credit. Responsible use helps you build your credit score. So that is definitely a pro of it for if you need a mortgage in the future. Looking at the cons of credit cards, paying interest. If you carry a balance, it's going to incur an interest charge. And like we've said a couple times, they're not low. It's expensive.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So a lot of people also, which, there's a balance here, but if you have credit card debt, sometimes you'll get in the mail a 0%, right, for a year or 18 months. But always read that fine print, right? Because usually, maybe even always, I don't know, there's a fee for that, right? So it's a 3% or $300. So okay, you say $1,000 in credit card debt at 25%. That's awful, right? They're 24.95. I don't know if they ever go over 25, but
they do.
Do they now? Yeah, I mean,
I saw one the other day that was 31.99%.
Jesus, what?
I threw
That's
up a
crazy.
little bit in my mouth.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Yes,
but think about it. If you have $1,000, you're paying 31% on. That's awful. That's terrible. You don't want to be there. But you could say, "Oh, I got this 0% in the mail, and it's $300. It's only $3." You're still paying the same thing, right? So be very wary. Do the math. It can work out in your benefits. If you've got a large balance and you're trying to get that paid off, and it's $300, you got $10,000 on there. It's a whole different. Okay, probably then makes sense. None of it's great, but it may make sense at that point. If you can then pay it off within that time frame that you have that 0%, it's better than where you are now. But if you have a lower balance, really pay some attention to what that fine print is. So I apologize for interjecting, Ryan, but go ahead.
Not at all. Let's see. So debt risk is a con of credit cards. It can lead to overspending and accumulating debt with those high interest rates. So that's a downside. And then fees. If you're late on a payment, you get a fee. There's annual fees on some credit cards. Some are, well, I guess it depends on the person, but some are considered worth the fee, some are not. So again, doing your research and figuring out, do the perks I get with this card that has a $95 annual fee outweigh the perks of this free annual credit card? That's a personal choice. But there's other charges as well that you have to look in, like your transfer charge that you had mentioned. And like we said, it's educate yourself, understand what you were doing. And if you can't understand it after reading it, find some trusted advisor who does, and talk to them about it. And if they won't help you, they are not a trusted advisor of yours. It's as cut and dry as that. But at the end of the day, choosing between credit and debit really ultimately depends on your financial habits and goals. So as we stated earlier, if you are a spender and you get the money, it burns a hole in your pocket, go with debit. Look harder at debit, I should say. I can't just blanket say go with debit. We need to talk about some other things, but probability is debit makes more sense. Otherwise, you'll get yourself into a credit card trap. Versus if you have that responsibility, you're only going to spend what is available. Credit does offer some good perks.
Yep. No, you're absolutely. And one other thing I would say to be mindful of, earlier in the show, I mentioned I had problems with American Express, and this is going back 20 years, probably more. So I don't know if this happens anymore.
You always drive?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was a nightmare because I signed up for a American Express card. Again, this was a long time ago, and what wasn't necessarily disclosed directly to me, I'm sure it was somewhere in the paperwork, that they automatically subscribed me to some, let's call it a newsletter. I don't even know what it was. I didn't even know about it, but there was a cost going on this credit card that I wasn't even aware of. Now, I paid that credit card off, right, and left it open because I understand how credit works. And then all of a sudden I get a collections in the mail maybe a year later for hundreds of dollars. Like, you owe $500. I don't remember the number. I'm kind of making it up, but it was a lot. I'm like, no, I paid this off a year ago. It's just been open. There was this subscription to something that I never signed up with that came with the card. I never knew about, that had been accruing, and then accruing late fees and accruing interest on top of interest on top of interest until they sent it to a collections agency. Long story short, I got on the phone talking to this lady. I know a lot about credit. Most people probably don't. So she's trying to just sweep me under the rug, which wasn't going to happen. It got a little hot and heavy. Finally, I got somebody on the phone that could do something. And they were like, yeah, you're right. They wiped it all clean. Didn't have any hit to my credit or anything. It was fine. But I was like, I will never do business with American Express again, because they don't like, hey, if it states 25% and I'm signing up for a 25% credit card and I don't pay it off, that's on me. But if you're trying to trick me, I don't like it. I do hold grudges in that way. Probably not a great character trait, but hey, sorry, it is what it is. But getting back to credit and debit, I think it's clear that both cards, they have their place depending on who you are, right, and your discipline, as we've been talking about. So for those who use credit cards, do you have any tips that for people so they don't fall into a tremendous amount of debt that they can't get into with these exorbitant interest rates that might be added to this?
Absolutely. First, I do have an American Express credit card. That did not occur with me.
I know. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an American Express. There are some very good perks, right? I get it.
I don't know if, because of that, I don't know if that's illegal to do anymore, or
I would hope so.
I would hope it is, but I can say that did not happen to me. But I'm not shocked that happened. They're in business to make money, not help the people. So at the end of the day, looking at tips, being responsible, using credit responsibly, that's the key. And doing your research, and where I would, if I had to look at your American Express example, and I know it was a different time, but looking at those statements every month that come through to make sure. Now, again, I can't fault you. You thought it was closed, or not closed, but zeroed out. So why would you look at those statements? But that's part of using it responsibly. Looking through your charges, make sure that everything's correct. At the end of the day, it falls on you.
Yeah, it does. It's my fault.
Shouldn't.
I mean, that instance is my fault because I didn't pay attention. I thought it was done. I was a young kid. I mean, I was in my 20s. We were doing pretty well. So it was like, I don't put a lot of
I
credit
get
on
it.
credit, but
Yeah, I
I
totally
take
get it.
fault, but it's like, hey, I don't like nefarious things.
Yes,
Yeah.
I blame them, but
It falls on my shoulders. Absolutely.
at the end of the day, it's up to you. And if your argument, they said, look, we sent you a statement every month, you didn't pay it. Are they nefarious? Yes. Do you owe that money? Yes. You signed up for the card and didn't do your full due diligence to see that, which was probably hidden. Again, I'm not putting it on you, but this kind of hits on a lot of the things we need to look at and think about in order to use that credit responsibly. Another one, pay in full. Always aim to pay your balance in full each month so you're not paying interest. Set a budget. Take your credit card and treat it like it's a debit card. Only spend what you can afford to pay. Set up automatic payments so that you can avoid late fees as a good tip. Track your spending. With technology, they track it for you. So just use the technology that's available so you can monitor your transactions regularly to catch unauthorized charges early. If you come in 2 months later and say, hey, I never did that, it's really hard, or it's harder to fix that than if you catch it within a week or 2 weeks. Hey, I didn't do this. Okay, now I can make my argument stronger.
Yeah.
And use rewards wisely as well. Only chase rewards if you can manage your spending and pay off your balance. If you follow these general tips or guidelines, you can enjoy the benefits of credit cards without falling into debt.
Yeah. No, I think that's really very sound advice, Ryan. Good job. Thank you for that. Obviously, managing credit and debit responsibly, it's key to building a financial foundation and having that discipline. Okay, but so now let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about when we come back. We'll talk about a notorious scandal in financial history, which is the salad oil swindle. We'll be right back.
That's gonna be a fun one.
It should be good. Let's see. This episode is brought to you by the Monteverdi Group. In the world of finance, it's not just about managing your wealth, it's about navigating the journey with wisdom and foresight.
The Monteverdi Group stands with the visionaries and the innovators, offering bespoke financial strategies that align with your unique life goals. Whether you're eyeing the markets, planning your retirement oasis, or securing a legacy for generations to come, our team is dedicated to crafting a path that respects your ambitions and values.
So what sets the Monteverdi Group apart? Oh, it's our commitment to personalized service. We understand that every financial journey is unique, and that's why we tailor our approach to fit your individual needs. With a keen eye on the global financial landscape and a deep understanding of our clients, we strive to provide guidance that not only meets but exceeds expectations.
So come and join us at the Monteverdi Group, where your financial aspirations meet our expertise. We're here to navigate the complexities of wealth management together, ensuring that every step taken is a step towards achieving your dreams.
So discover a partnership that values your vision. Visit monteverdigroup.com to learn more about how we can support your financial journey. The Monteverdi Group, where your financial future is in dedicated hands.
That's MONTE, V as in Victor, ERDE, group.com. Adri, the salad oil swindle. It's one of those financial fraud stories that's both shocking and fascinating. Can you explain how this scheme unfolded and who was behind it?
Yeah, so the salad oil swindle. I don't know what the name's crazy.
A ring to
Right?
it.
It does. Also known as the Great Salad Oil Swindle, was orchestrated by Anthony Tino De Angeles. I gotta love Tino, right? I don't in the early 60s. So DeAngelis was a commodities trader who ran a company called Allied Crude Vegetable Oil Refining Corporation. ACVO, it doesn't Agvork.
Nope.
You're looking for something. But he ended up, so he found a loophole, exploited the loophole in the trading system to infiltrate the value of his soybean oil inventory. So here's how it worked in general. So DeAngelis would inflate the amount of oil in his storage tanks by filling them mostly with water. Great. And then topping them off with just a thin layer of soybean oil on top. So that's great. So the inspectors, of course, inspectors, they just test the surface, and then they certified that these tanks are full of actual soybean oil. It's pretty smart. I would be worried, like, probably not going to get away with this, but hey, I guess he knew the inspectors. You never know what happened behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Were these inspectors really, but whatever. Now, with these fraudulent inventory certifications, he obtained warehouse receipts, which he used as collateral to secure massive loans from banks and commodities trading firms. Okay, interesting. So DeAngelis then used those loans to speculate in the soybean oil futures market, driving up prices artificially, right, of his own products, and then profiting from the inflated value of his inventory. I mean, pretty genius, but it's,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, good on you, because I wouldn't have the cojones to do all that. But hey, now at the peak, he was able to obtain loans and line of credit worth $180 million in this is in the 60s, right? So that's worth, I don't know what the inflated value, well, equivalent to about $1.5 billion today in loans.
Wow.
Right, in credit. As always, right, with these stories, it ended up collapsing. The scheme collapsed when the market turned and lenders discovered that his inventory was what? Not soybean oil, but mostly water. So it never turns out well, right? But he had a few good years there.
So let me get this straight. He bought a little bit of soybean oil, bunch of water, filled the tanks mostly with water, put a little bit of soybean oil on top.
Because oil floats to the top, right? That was brilliant.
Yeah. So he used that theoretical inventory to go get a loan from the bank against that to buy oil futures to increase the value of oil, to then sell his fake oil at that increased value.
Spot on.
That's incredible. Right. To your point of, I mean, it's incredibly nefarious and shady, and he should go to jail, but it's incredible how he managed to deceive so many banks and financial institutions, and whether he was deceiving the inspectors too, or just bribing them. That behind the scenes thing. So what were the immediate consequences of the swindle once that market turned?
Yeah, so let me say something before I talk about that, because this still happens. I don't want to say today, but I know a guy, I'm obviously not going to name any names or locations or anything, who's, I don't know what his net worth is, but it's a tremendous amount. But he got started It was a little nobody town, kind of wrong side of the tracks type of thing. And if I remember the story, I think he was kind of in landscaping or something like that, but he wanted to get a loan and he had no equipment. He had no money. So he had no collateral to get a loan with. So he went around town and took pictures of other people's their equipment, like the certificate with the, like, I don't know if it's the VIN number, but that type of thing, and submitted them to the bank as his own equipment, got the loans, built a huge company, sold the company, bought other companies. So, I mean, he's hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know his net worth, but you go, oh, but so part of it, you go, it's pretty ingenious. I mean, definitely nefarious, but hey, if you don't have the money to get the equipment, how do you get the equipment? You're stuck in this, you rock between a hard place type of thing, and you get a little creative. And I'm not saying anybody should do that, but today it still happens. Obviously it's nowhere near this type of level. But
his nickname Tino?
How'd you know?
Because it sounds like something this Tino would have done.
Like, it's just amazing because I would never be able to do any of that. But but to talk about the
aren't
fall,
you afraid of getting caught? That's the repercussions of that, which I'm sure you're about to get into. So I'll just stop talking based on that. But that's why what should keep people from doing stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, so in this case, in the salad oil swindle, the fallout was disastrous, of course. When it unraveled in November of 1963, it led to a massive financial crisis. Major creditors like American Express and Bank of America were left with hundreds of millions of dollars in bad loans. American Express in particular lost almost $58 million. And again, we're talking about 1963, which severely obviously impacted its own stock price and credibility. But moreover, the collapse sent shockwaves through the entire commodities trading industry, revealing systemic flaws in how warehouse receipts were verified and how they were used for collateral. That led to bankruptcies. There was lawsuits, investigations into the practices of commodity trading firms, which you kind of expect that, when we talk about that regulatory issue always coming after the fact, because to your point, always, I have my dishwasher, if there's no problem, what do we need to fix? So, this is what happens. Somebody's playing the wrong game. Now we know about it. All the destruction's always already happened, but now let's regulate for it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, was the magazine that American Express signed you up for Soybean Oil Monthly?
I should go look and find out because it probably was. I was going to say
to get some of their money back. Now
trying to get their money back.
They
want their $58 million coming from me at 25 years old.
Yeah. Wow. The impact of that was clearly far-reaching. What were some of the broader implications of this salad oil swindle for the financial industry and regulations that they put in place?
Yeah, the scandal prompted a comprehensive review of that commodities trading, as I was talking about, of that industry, and then led to tighter regulations on specifically warehouse receipts. Some of the key regulatory changes were stricter warehouse oversights, right? So stricter standards for warehouse issuing receipts for commodities, if that makes sense. Verification, so inventory verification practices to prevent fraudulent receipts or certificates, and then greater scrutiny of financial institutions, their own lending practices, specifically in this case for commodities trading. So the swindle, it's something we always talk about. It really just highlights the importance of transparency and of course, due diligence in financial transactions, leading to more stringent risk management practices, which we talk about that all the time.
Yeah, and it also highlights that that can be a challenge too for your everyday individual. How it's virtually impossible for your average everyday individual investor to look into this to say that there might be fraud there. You have warehouse receipts, you have loans from the banks totaling in today's dollars 1.5 billion. How can you look at that as an individual and say, well, maybe not everything's right here?
I don't think you can.
That's why the regulators are important, I think. And it just, I mean, it's yet another cautionary tale about fraud, but also the importance of quality oversight. That's what these regulators should be focusing on and doing. And in hindsight, it's very easy for me to say, everybody knows oil rises to the top. Why wouldn't they be testing the bottom of the barrel?
Right.
That's simple, knowing that this occurred. But at the same time, if I was one of those inspectors, would I just dip the tester onto the top and test that? Or am I going to get and I don't know how big these containers are, but am I getting a 20-foot long pole to pull a sample from the bottom? Like, come on. And now I'm sure they are, but only because of this happening, not, I mean, we inherently think people are good. And unfortunately, we're taught by things like this that we have to have the oversight that is robust enough to look at this in greater detail. And it's funny, everyone gets offended when a regulator asks a question about your character, basically. I would never do that. How dare you think that? Well, because people have.
Okay.
That's why. I'm not saying you would necessarily,
but they don't know.
You'd ask the question.
Yeah. Ask the question and find out. Because you're right. The individual investor isn't going to know. They're going to trust what they were told by large corporations. And you would think that you're being told the truth, but we know time and time again that that's not across the board, obviously, but we single out these swindles just to make sure that people, do your own due diligence, right? Just don't take the word of anybody for that matter. I mean, even as an advisor, we tell our clients, here's what we're going to do. You got to do your own research. Sometimes they say, no, we trust you, blah, blah, blah. But we're always saying, here's what we recommend, whatever the case is, you should do your own due diligence just to make sure that, because we know who we are, but you don't know. You don't know. We don't have, especially a new person that you're talking to, right? This whole thing is about trust. And you should never trust somebody just because they're sitting in front of you, right? They might have the best smile. They might have the $3,000 three-piece suit on and, the nice gold watch. And it probably means you probably shouldn't trust them. That's a whole different story.
Make them earn your trust.
Yeah. It takes time. It takes time.
I know I just said them, but make everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad. I wish it were different and we could inherently trust everyone to do the right thing and have our best interest in their best interest. I would love that. Sadly, that's not the case in our society. Greed makes people do bad things.
We know there's predators, so just not everybody, not most people, but
no, the majority are good, but you need to make everyone earn that trust. And I'm not saying live with this chip on your shoulder, assuming that everyone is bad.
Right.
That's not what I want people to do. But at the same time, make them earn it.
Yeah.
Do your due diligence. And I'm not saying it needs to be years long of that. But question people. Why? My favorite question is why?
Mm-hmm.
Explain that to me. Why do you view it that way? Tell me. And you may have a very valid reason. Why do you want to do this? As an advisor, why do you recommend this type of investment strategy? Tell me why, and then let me do my research after the fact to say, okay, that makes sense to me. I'm on board. And go from that. I think today's episode, Adri, from Dave Ramsey's financial wisdom to lessons of credit and debit, and the incredible deception of the salad oil swindle has provided kind of a fascinating look into the complexities of both personal and financial management.
Yeah, most definitely. Always these stories, they highlight the importance of, as you said, of financial literacy, of vigilance, of course, informed decision making, due diligence. We talk about all the time, in navigating this world of money. So thank you, Ryan, for your insights and talking about credit and debit. I think our conversation about Dave Ramsey and credit cards versus debit and debt was very interesting. I hope people can learn from that. And then just that those tales of predators out there and scam artists are always important, just to remind people that, yes, we want people to be good and we want to trust people, but you can't always tell who's, what's the word? There's a phrase, a wolf in sheep's clothing, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Yeah, that kind of thing. So thank you all to our listeners for joining us on today's episode of Money Mavericks and Mayhem.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Adri. We look forward to bringing you more stories that illuminate the challenges, strategies, and utter mayhem within the world of finance. Till next time.
All right. Have fun out there, everybody.
Stole my catchphrase that I stole from you.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to effect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks including possible loss of principal. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.